Hey guys, I bring you today my heavy flamer DoT build, using poison, bleed and burn damage. When I made my gameplay preview video, I overlooked a few crucial parts. Now the build is much more optimized and deals significantly more damage. It can comfortably run 118 missions, and it's really fun to play around with all the AoE ground effects. I hope you guys enjoy it. In our attributes, put 25 points in warfare to get a damage bonus to elites and bosses, also 25 points in toughness for the resistances and damage reduction, and 20 in virtue to get another 35% damage bonus. The first perk and the most important one for surviving will be the Blessing of St. Victorious. Then I like to play with Augmented Body 2. The suppression increase gives you some room to breathe. The last perk is Diverse Tactics. This will allow us to apply physical vulnerabilities while we are using a heat-based weapon. And for those of you who don't know, poison and bleed are physical damage based, so physical vulnerability will increase their damage. For our stats, we have really solid defenses, and when our refractor field is on, it gets even better. We also have a very high crit chance. And our crit strength is at a point that in combination with our neural implant we get over 136, which gives us a 200% DoT damage boost. Our DoTs get a bunch of damage bonuses of course, and we also have a high vulnerability effectiveness, since vulnerabilities boost DoT damage as well. Before I go over my items, I quickly want to mention that I'm including one item that is from the current season on PC. But I have an alternative for the console players. As I mentioned before, on the neural implant I got the enchant that boosts my crit strength. And as we can get DoT damage on secondary enchants here, try to use a 6 enchant implant. That way you have access to up to 3 secondary slots. Next, I'm using the seasonal eye implant. That gives me enrage token on crits. Unfortunately, this item only rolls primary enchants. Otherwise we could boost the DoT damage even more here. On the main implant, I'm using the enchant to boost our poison damage. We can also boost every attribute stat here, and even get some supreme crit chance. Socket the damage boost to bleeding in here, since we are often in close range with enemies when we are using the heavy flamer. So now as an alternative for console users, you can get this enchant on your main implant. That way you have an enrich token source. And then you can just exchange your eye implant for something like this. So you have damage per enrich token, and for your secondary enchants you can even roll more DoT damage here. If you are not getting enough enrich token that way, you can also exchange your neural implant enchant with this one. And to compensate for the lack of crit strength, you can just socket in those shards. Okay, next the purity seal has to be this one. That's the only way to apply bleed dots while using a heat-based weapon. In my belt slot I'm using the refractor field. The boost it provides for 30 seconds is really strong, but by no means do you have to use it. You could use a teleporter for example if you want to speed farm. The important part here is to get a Fear Aura enchant. It will speed up your general vulnerability stacks greatly. If you wanna know more about that, you can watch my advanced player guide. For the secondary enchants here, we can boost again every type of DoT. And for the sockets I'm using vulnerability effectiveness and shield drain. For the armor you can use any type. It doesn't have to be the assault one. Just important is to get this enchantment. It provides some decent healing. And the 50% damage reduction to poison doesn't mean it gets halved. You can see my poison damage now, and when I take it off, it's only 50% higher. So it subtracts 50% of your total poison damage. It is not halving it. That's a very important point to know. For the rest of the enchants, just get defenses here. And for the secondary, I chose another supreme crit chance one. It also gives me 10 points in crit strength, and in combination with this one, my crit strength will be over 150. So I will also have the 400% crit damage boost. I socketed here the Ethereal Sun Doctrine. This will help us greatly with surviving high level missions. and it's also a great source for constant inoculator charges. And in the last slot I'm using one more vulnerability effectiveness. On my inoculator I'm boosting the poison damage further. And every enchant besides the movement speed is a must-have here. For the components I'm using Bloodbalm for healing, 2 times Psychon for a 400% damage boost, and Hold Fast to make the damage boost last longer. In my sockets I'm using 1 Ordinato Psalm, that gives me a way to reduce the enemy's armor, 1 AoE damage shard, since every attack of the Flamer is AoE based, and again 1 more vulnerability effectiveness. Now we come to the Heavy Flamer. The only way to get a poison on hit enchant is if you play a Radical Crusader. For the rest of the enchants, I would say the most important ones are the crit chance and strength and the heat cost reduction. That way you can use those 2 attacks much more often. For the sockets I'm using this doctrine to give another huge damage boost to our dots, and in the last open slot I'm using 1 suppression on hit shard. The first signum will be one that gives damage per enrich token. Crit chance and strength is important here, and you can get again up to 3 dot damage boosts as secondary enchants. The second signum is the one that provides general vulnerabilities. It gives us another huge damage boost, and as before you can use your secondary enchants here to boost your dot damage. As a secondary weapon you can use another Flamer, or you could use a Grav Gun. If you use a Flamer, then you will mainly use it for those 2 AoE effects, and if you use a Grav Gun, then use it for the Gravity Implosion. For the enchants I'm using a similar setup as before. As your primary enchant I recommend using something strong, like the damage per debuff enchant, or you could use this enchant for huge AoE damage. For the sockets I'm also using the same as before, but if you need more survivability, you could exchange those sockets for this setup, so you get a lot of suppression and HP on hit. Both of our signums will also be the same as in the first set. We are having a maxed out AoE tree, since every attack of the Heavy Flamer is AoE based. In the crit tree we get everything except this one. With this skill we will always have enough class resource. Here we get some extra healing, and this will give us another 100% damage bonus. In the damage over time tree we get every skill except this one. With this we will make the dot effects last longer and disable enemy HP regeneration, and with this we will always apply slow. In the heat attacks tree we have 2 skills that will help us with our overheat, and with this we have a way to apply heat vulnerabilities. I put 1 point in support for the inoculator capacity, which will bring it up to a 30. This allows me to have 3 charges instead of 2. In the debuff tree we get another nice damage boost from the skill in the middle. With this we can get a good amount of suppression, since we can knock down enemies with Scorched Earth, and Strike Down will also reduce their damage for 10 seconds. With our high crit chance we will get a lot of cooldown reduction from this skill. This will also give us a little bit more on deflect, and with this we get some movement speed. In the health tree I put 4 points to get this one. This will give me a guaranteed inoculator reset when I enter exposed state. So at the same time you trigger the ethereal state from this doctrine, you will automatically reset your inoculator, and you will also get 1 inoculator charge from this doctrine. So it's a perfect combo to stay alive. Lastly, in the defense tree we get a bunch of resistances, a second chance, and a nice boost to our deflect. Let me show you a 118 mission now. If you have any questions, just ask me in the comments down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe.
And such a vast threat can only be fought with ingenuity. Kill the masters, and you will render a sea of vermin helpless. He deserved worse, much worse. simply wander aimlessly until it withers and dies.